Hi everyone, welcome back to the WARC Indian History Podcast. I'm Utkarsh.
Namaskar, Sumedha here. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our foray into art and culture and music, and we are going to continue with it today. But first,
Clearly we enjoyed it, so we are
yes, we did.
continuing with it.
No, in Geneva, it seems that the WAC Indian podcast has really made a mark because wherever I go, I meet people who listen to it, who ask me questions, who give me feedback, etc. And I've discussed
hmm
that feedback with you, Utkarsh. So
hmm
that's a bright spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole point of doing this is that somebody is listening. So whoever's listening, thank you. We know 34,000 or 35,000 of you have subscribed. There are some of you who listen but don't subscribe. We're keeping a close eye
Yes.
on you. But thank you for listening anyway.
Yes, and please do subscribe. It means a lot to us. So do please take out the time to subscribe, even to ask for notifications. So that would be really good for us. Utkarsh, I think because of our spotty record in terms of schedule, perhaps we should tell our listeners what we are planning to do.
Yeah, I think we will have an episode whenever you are seeing this, and we'll have one more episode the week after. So, and then there'll be a break for a week since I'm traveling again. I seem to have a fetish for just not being in my house, apparently, but I'm
And
traveling
it's a
again.
beautiful house, so I don't know why you are not in your house.
But yeah, so we'll have a break for a week and then we'll be back. So the last week of January and the first week of February, you will have an episode, but after that there'll be a break, and then we should be back towards the latter half of February.
And some of the listeners, you know who you are, have sent me very nice suggestions on future episodes. Thank you for that. We are going to be working on them. Utkarsh, I have not told you of these yet, but I will. People are
Okay.
coming in with really good suggestions. So we will
hmm
definitely take your suggestions into account. And
Yeah.
when we put out those episodes, I hope they'll be to your satisfaction. But now for today, what are we going to do today, Utkarsh? Your choice.
I wish I thought about this. No, of course we did, but you know, one of the interesting things as you go down Indian history or just examine Indian thought is there's a differentiation that's there in the way we normally look at things in the more Western oriented way of looking in the world, which is there's science, there is religion, there is philosophy, there is art, there is whatever else there might be, right? All very well differentiated. I find that that is the default we assume, but when you look at the Indian way, everything is interconnected. Philosophy may be interconnected with epistemology or whatever it might be. So we wanted to go dig deeper into art. And when we were talking about music, I think you mentioned that there are supposed to be 64. Is it 64
Yes.
art forms?
Yes, yes,
Interesting,
indeed.
interesting choice of number also, 64, given how it can be divided, etc.
Yes,
So
it's
today
a
we'll
very
foray
significant
into,
number mathematically and also in terms of Vedic thought. We'll see more of it as we
okay,
go along.
yeah. So we'll dig deeper into understanding, firstly, art in Indian philosophy, in the Indian thought, right? Similar to how we've looked at other things. And then what exactly are these 64? Or put another way, what do we recognize today that comes under the classifications, the very, very old ancient classifications? So we can start anywhere you prefer. Maybe you can take us through how art is thought of. What is the purpose, or what is art really in the Indian context?
Now that's you've given me a free hand, Utkarsh. So 64 arts. First, we have to understand what is art, but I'll go to that. The interesting thing is that if we go through this list of 64 arts, there's some of these things which we don't think of as art at all. Do you think of metallurgy as art today, Utkarsh? Do you think of weapon making as art? In fact, I mean,
Hmm.
do you think of, I don't know, this is a slightly dicey one, of literary criticism, is it art? So there are
Well,
some things.
critics have made a career out of it.
So my point here is that the silos in which we divide subjects today, according to Western epistemology, did not exist naturally. So what did
Mm-hmm.
exist? We have talked of those 14 Vidyasthanams. Everything is focused on the Vedas, the four Upvedas, the six Vedangs, on which we have done different episodes also. You'll remember Jyotish. You remember Nardiya
Mm-hmm.
Shiksha when we were discussing classical music. So these were the 14 seats of learning. Vidyasthanam is what? Seats of learning. Four more were added to it. This is the Puran and Nyay and Dharma Shastras, etc. You need not really go into the details. There was a whole big structure of the way knowledge was understood, and it was understood in a completely different, unified way. If there is one USP of Vedic thought and of the Vedic language, which is Sanskrit, it is unity. It is unity in thought. Very correctly, as you said, whether it is yoga, whether it is painting, whether it is dancing, whether it is philosophy, whether it is metallurgy, the philosophy behind all of it is the same. So, what is the idea of aesthetics? If we talk about art, we have to talk about aesthetics. So I don't want to bore people with this very some long theory of aesthetics because aesthetics can be very, very complicated. Those who want to can delve into the theory of rust, they can delve into different theories. But what is the idea behind art? So the idea behind art, the aesthetic theory, is all about putting things together. What things together? There is a world out there, and there is me, there is you. We experience the world through our own selves. So the idea of art is to bring these together, the reality of the world and the spiritual reality of the self. Then, there is a way of materially enjoying things. There is a way of spiritually enjoying things. Bring these two also together. And this is applicable to all art, visual, plastic, performing, literary arts, irrespective of whether they are folk or classical. This is the idea of art. Now, Indian aesthetics is codified in Sanskrit, Tamil, in other languages. There are three or four different theories, the ras or experience theory, dhani or suggestion theory, or chitya or impression, and vakrokti or expression theory. And I promise, no more theorizing. But I just wanted to give the idea that there is a very sophisticated way of understanding art and aesthetics. And these theories have been around for thousands of years. It's not yesterday or today or tomorrow. In fact, there are some scholars, Professor Bharat Gupta of Delhi University comes to mind, who have been doing a lot of work on how Indian aesthetics influenced Greek theatre. Now, I'm certain, Utkarsh, that you are more familiar with Greek theatre than Sanskrit theatre. You must be more familiar with it. But their
Greek theater?
Greek
I'm familiar
theatre.
with Greek mythology. I don't know theater particularly.
Okay, so Greek theatre is these stories from Greek mythology which have been written down as plays.
Okay, okay. So yeah, if 12 Tasks of Hercules is Greek theater, I'm familiar.
Yeah, all these different stories are the ones which are shown in classic mythological Greek stories
Hmm.
are the ones which are the subject of Greek theatre. And in the world of theatre, Greek theatre holds a special place as the oldest, the best, the most sophisticated. And I would kind of beg to differ, and I would like to bring Sanskrit theatre in front of all these aesthetes. Professor Bharat Gupta, amongst others, is doing this work. This very long history of sophisticated and deep thought on art has resulted in a very clear understanding and clear practice of this art. Therefore, we have this. Are you familiar with the Navrasas, Utkarsh? The nine rasas?
No,
No?
I
So
was going to
these
give you a very vague reference. The
of,
only Love Rasam is there's an Indian band, rock band called Thaikudam Bridge from Kerala,
yes,
and Love
yes.
Rasam is one of their albums, and also my favorite song from the album. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Yes, by
No,
the way,
actually,
but yes,
Utkarsh, you had sent this to me and I have checked it out and they are
this is the
an excellent band.
yeah. I meant it for the audience. You've seen it. You've seen that the
Yeah.
music video with the dancers, right, and
Yes.
the family of dancers.
The little boy.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but yes.
No, so
Slight
that's,
tangent, but a good one.
it's not a tangent, it's very, very pertinent because they are showing what are rasas, they are connected to bhav or emotions. And these emotions are the instrument through which we experience art. Indian theory has nine rasas. Shringar, Hasya, Karuna, Veer, Rodra, Bhayanak, etc. So it brings in all of human experience, joy, sorrow, happiness, humor, anger, everything, and even peace. So these are because we have deep, unique instincts inside us, which are the seeds of these emotions. When we see something, those emotions come to the surface. And that's what art and aesthetics is all about. So there are many things that you can do which can be called art from time immemorial. There has been an exposition of what these arts are. So, you have sources such as the Puranas. So, there are Puranic sources of what is the list of these arts. There are Jain sources. There are also Buddhist sources. Then Sanskrit sources, as in the Harivansh, the Vishnu Puran, etc., etc. One very interesting source, of course, naturally, is the Kam Sutra Vatsyayana because that is all about the sophisticated enjoyment of all the pleasures that life has to offer, and art is one of the biggest pleasures that life has to offer. So there is a list in the Kama Sutra also. So all these, so you
So
can
that's an
roughly say.
interesting observation. So what is not so okay? We're going to sound like art critics here, but I'll try my
That's
best
an
not to
art
sound like
form.
one.
Oh, Kash, that's an art form.
Okay, so bear with me as we go down this road, but I want to understand because I'm going down something. So there's an interesting conversation. Can a car ever be art? And the answer is it can't because art has no function except itself. Car has got a function to transport people.
Who has given
I'm
this
just talking.
answer?
No, no. This is just a conversation. I'm not saying this is the answer.
Okay,
This is the debate.
okay.
So, which brings me to the question: what is art, and can art have is art for has a does can art have a purpose, or does art have a purpose, and is that purpose enjoyment? Is that what Indian thought is, or is it something different?
So
So,
I'll answer this by repeating what I just said, that art is to bring together the world and the self. It is to bring together the material and the spiritual. So you call it enjoyment, fine. You call it spirituality, fine. Call it whatever you like.
yeah, yeah, that's
So
okay.
that's
So
a
then
different way of approaching it. Your
I
question
got that,
was
which is why
functional.
I'm digging deeper. Then, so then you could say bringing together to the yourself to the self, whatever that could be also say that could be the purpose of prayer. But there is a differentiation, right? What is art is not
Then,
necessarily prayer. So how do
ah,
you?
so spoken like a person from Western epistemology.
Of course.
This binary is not recognized in Indian aesthetics.
Okay. So
Therefore,
that's what I wanted.
therefore,
That's what I
yes,
understand.
yes. So, for example, most of the most beautiful music is what you would call prayer. Devotional music is some of the most beautiful, the most beautiful example of art, of music. And in fact, this whole bringing together of the self and the world of materiality and spirituality, it is done through music, and the Godhead, Paramatma, is approached through music. There's no difference between prayer and art. None at all. And Utkarsh, then let's just go a little bit deeper into this. Tell me why Western thought differentiates between prayer and art. Does it? First of all, does it? Because there's ample example of art as devotional in Christian theological and sculptural history. So is it this maybe is a kind of new development of post-Enlightenment thought about Western art, perhaps?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to dig deeper in that. And conscious of time, I'm okay. But
Yes.
basically, art. Yeah. Well, let's get into that. I think that could be a that. I think when we get in deeper into Indian philosophy in probably one of our episodes, I think that's when this topic should be
Utkarsh, the consciousness episode.
the consciousness episode, for example, which is the most awaited episode,
At
even by
least by
me.
the two. God
But
knows when
yes,
it'll happen.
okay. So 64 arts.
Yes,
How
64
do I
arts.
understand?
So 64 arts. 64 is a number beloved by Vedic scholars. So many things in the entire schema are 64 because it has a certain mathematical importance, as you yourself pointed out. So it's also sometimes, in a way, it's a shortcut or a signifier. It's more like a signifier than anything else. However, many of these Puranic lists or the lists from the Harivansh, etc., do actually consist of 64 activities which are designated as art. And these are of so many types, things, as I said, which today we would never think of as art. And how should we do it? If I just give you a list of 64, it's no fun. I think you should just ask me, is this art? And I'll tell you whether it is or not.
Okay, let me ask it in a specific way. So drawing slash painting, if I'm thinking from Western,
Yes.
this
Yes, of
person who
course.
can be a draw can be a painter, okay, is different from a person who's a musician, is
Yes.
different from a person who's a writer, right? All
Yes.
the different.
Yes.
So are the silos in Indian thinking similar to this, or are they different?
Okay. No, so these are, of course, art. The first one in every list, see, these lists are a little different here and there, some small
Mm-hmm.
things. But the first thing in all of these is Geet. Geet is music. Then you have Vadya, which is musical instruments. Then you have expertise in Veena and Damru and water instruments. So remember again, we've done episodes on all these. We've done an episode on classical music. We did
So
one on
Geet is
Veena.
music or singing? Because musical instruments also make music.
Patience, my dear Utkarsh, patience.
As a
Because the
musician, I not very patient.
yes, yes, okay. So music is geet, that is singing, musical instruments, etc., etc. And there is nritya, which is dancing. So singing, instrumental music, dancing, and then there is natya. Natya is drama, which includes all these things. Singing, instrumental music, and veena, damru, everything. It includes all of it. And painting, that is alekhya. It's called alekhya. That is also part of this. And there is also this knowledge of poetics, dramaturgy, criticism, etc. So this is why I was asking you, do you think literary criticism is a part of 64 arts? In actual fact, it is. So, things which are mentioned in this list are, of course, not exclusive to these lists of 64 arts. They are mentioned everywhere. If you go to the Bhagavad Puran, then Krishna ji and his brother Balram was said to have learned the 64 arts in 64 days, all of them. Then, if you are you saying something?
Yes, asking.
Hmm. Hmm.
So is philosophy an art, or is art, or
Philosophy.
being a philosopher, or is be, or yeah?
Philosophy is a Christian word. Ask me in Hindi.
I don't know the word.
So,
Okay,
because
what would I think what would our friend Socrates be in the Indian definition?
so he would be a rishi, a seer.
Okay, so he's not an artist.
He would not be an artist, no.
So then that is not art, for example. So that's kind of, though
Yes.
you could say the purpose of what he is doing also is to get closer to
Yes.
understanding.
Yes. And therefore, remember my opening remarks that there is a unity to all this. There is a single thrust of everything that you do. But yes, good question or bad question, because philosophy is not an art. So now ask me a
Okay,
good question. But first, I must, should I just tell you a little bit about, Alekhya? Because
sure, sure.
Alekhya or painting is a very
Hmm.
interesting thing. It's one of the oldest arts. Paintings have been seen on, rock paintings are also there. They
Of
are there
course.
from the Stone Age. And many examples in,
Hmm.
is it that somebody has raised their hand? That's me. Sorry.
Not
My
me.
fault. Yeah, it was me. Sorry. Sorry, sorry. So, I was talking to you about Alekhya, which is painting, and painting has a very specific theory behind it, which is there in the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran. There's a part which is called the Chitra Sutra. Interesting thing here is that the interdependence of so many different arts is explained in this. Yatha nritte tatha chitre. As you dance, so is the painting. As you sculpt, so is the painting. So you see, dance, sculpture, painting, same principles. However, in this Chitra Sutra, how to mix paints, how to apply, how to prepare surfaces, types of paintings, how to represent different emotions, types of human body, postures, auspicious marks, etc. All these are detailed over here. So, do you remember that famous picture of Da Vinci, that one in which the what's it called? The what man is it?
Is it something with V? I'll just look it up.
Yeah. So you
Vesuvian
remember the
man.
yes.
Vesuvius man.
Yeah, so it gives the
Vitruvian man.
Vitruvian
Vitruvian.
man. Yeah, so it
Vitruvius
gives
is
a
a something
proportion.
else.
It's a volcano.
Yes.
So it gives the proportions of the human body. So if you
Yes.
read the Vastu Upanishad, Vastu Shastra
Hmm.
Upanishad, you will find all these things over there. So this
Hmm.
is as far as Chitra Sutra is concerned. That is
This is another anecdote time when I was in Venice 2 years ago. I ran to the museum where they have the Vitruvian man, only to understand that they only reveal him once a year, like for a certain small period.
oh, so
I
you missed
discovered
it.
that it was not happening for months, but I did not know
Oh,
that. I just ran to the museum. Anyways, that's a
okay, so you
separate
missed
story.
it. So you
I
missed
missed it.
it. So that means
Yes,
you have to come again.
perhaps. And continue not staying at home. Yes, going back to the beginning of this
Right.
podcast.
Right. So
Yeah.
you have had five hits and a miss when all your dance, music, etc., all that was right, and your philosophy was not in the list. So how about another one?
How about when you have those aesthetic things that you get horses to do, right? Horses to jump over things. I forget it's
Oh,
there in the
teaching animals to do stuff,
yes,
right? So
yeah,
there is something similar, which is called, teaching birds how to speak.
parrots or
Yes.
just to say or birds to sing or to
Speak.
speak. They already
Speak.
know how to sing. I don't think we
Yeah.
can do much about singing.
Yeah. So, although not teaching horses how to dance, but teaching birds how to speak, which is called Shuk Sarika Pralapan, that is very
Hmm.
much there. Then teaching them how to fight.
Mm.
So, cock fights and ram fights, etc. So, with respect to animals, yes. But interestingly, Utkarsh, horse riding is not an art because it is
Okay.
very much in the realm of fighting. It's in the realm of yuddha. So it
Okay.
is definitely not an art, although some weapon making is there in the list, but this teaching
Hmm.
horses how to do anything and this teaching horses how to dance. And last year I went to, I think it was Madrid, and I saw the Spanish riding school dances that they teach
Hmm.
to their
Okay.
horses, and it is absolutely beautiful. And actually amazing what they can make the horses do, but it comes from maneuvers in battle. So
Okay.
horses are mostly in the ancient world concerned more with battle than with anything else. So this I will
Okay.
count as a partial hit.
Hmm. Okay. Partial hit.
Partial hit.
Some are too obvious. Of course, there are. We already mentioned sculpting,
Yes,
etc.
sculpting, definitely. Sculpting, yes. And again, in the Vishnu Dharmottar Puran, there is the
Hmm.
whole theory of sculpting, exactly how you have to do it, the
Okay.
proportions of each and everything that you make, especially representation of the deities, very much there. So sculpting,
Which
of course.
brings me to, which is a good segue to what I was going to ask. So when I was thinking about sculpting, and then I was thinking about Elora,
Hmm.
where it's not just aesthetic, it's also a lot of calculations and a lot of science in terms of making
Yes,
carving
yes,
something out of a
yes,
single mountain.
Hmm.
So where does that come in? Where
Okay.
is the line drawn between science and art? Somebody
There
who would be in
is.
charge, say like an architect, right, would be the closest thing I could think
Hmm.
of.
Yes.
What is that in the Indian context?
So that is number 26 on my list. That is Shilp and Vastukala. So that means both an architect and a sculptor. And
Okay.
in Vastukala, everything that you would today call, say, civil engineering.
Hmm.
And what was an engineer called during that time? He was called a Sthapati. And this was, Sthapatya.
So
So
is he an artist or is he a engineer is an artist or not?
he's an artist engineer.
Hmm.
So this is an
So good. I
interesting
did
one.
get an art. I always wanted to be an artist and I had to do engineering. So should I feel better about myself,
Yeah,
my degree now?
from today, you are officially designated an artist as per the 64 arts.
Brilliant. This is what all engineers in India need to know.
Yeah.
They're all artists.
They are all artists. No, so that's why, Utkarsh, this dividing line between these silos between these subjects, aren't they a little crazy? Because even if you look like music, there's so much math in music.
Of course. Yes.
Then why should you say that a mathematician is not a musician and vice versa? A mathematician may not be a musician. A musician has to be a mathematician.
So
He or she
again,
is a natural mathematician.
yes. So which again, which we keep getting drawn into philosophy. See, the interesting thing that I find the difference between making a piece of art that is amazing versus making a product, right?
Hmm.
Or making something which is like putting together a plane, putting together an aeroplane that can fly is an amazing achievement, but it's a very particular, specific arrangement done deliberately. That this is what the dimensions need to be, whatever it needs to be. Art can be created, or say a great song can be created, at least in the modern context. And we can talk about what classical context is by somebody who has no knowledge of music theory. Now, a person who understands music theory can analyze it after the fact and say they are going from this note or using this whatever. But the person who creates it, and it's not something that you can particularly put down. At least again in the modern context, at least when I think of great songs that I am fond of, there's no formula. It literally comes from something. A great
But
movie that you see on.
Utkarsh, that's called, a natural, intuitive, creative theorizing. So
But
there's
you can
somebody
be an intuitive
and
artist, but you can't be an
without knowing.
intuitive engineer, your building will fall down. You need to understand the basics of
No,
what's
no,
going
no.
on.
I am not so certain about that. Because if you are a good engineer, if you are a successful engineer, then you may be better at it than somebody who knows the theory better. The thing is, Utkarsh, today we are very much into qualifications and assurance. So today, if I'm building a multi-story apartment or whatever, I need an architect who is certified. I need an engineer who is certified.
No, no,
This
but
is
it goes beyond that.
no, no,
Just to
no,
measure
Utkarsh.
forces and loads. You can't do it without understanding how forces work.
Yes,
There's no intuition
but
here.
your understanding can be intuitive. Do you know
No,
what?
it's calculations.
No.
You
So
can't.
again,
It can't be
this,
intuitive.
this is a difference between Western and Indian thinking. So what were our rishis called? They were called drashtas. What did they see? They saw a lot of things. A lot of it is philosophy. A lot of those are formulas. Even when you look at subjects like metallurgy, which is, by the way, on the list of 64 arts, there can be people who told you how to do things because they understood it intuitively. Now, poetry is about meter. Poetry is also very technical. And the Sanskrit shloks and sutras are amazingly technical. So
Hmm.
I must have told you the story of one of the disciples of Adi Shankaracharya who was really dumb. Tota Kashtakam, I think I have told you this before, who was
Yeah,
really
yeah, I remember
dumb.
the story.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he apparently knew nothing. And he was the
Hmm.
dumbest person of all. And yet one day he composed this Tota Kashtakam, which is the last word in technical Sanskrit poetry. So I think here we'll have to agree to
I
disagree,
think
or
yeah,
rather,
yeah, no, I think it's interesting because it just goes back down to the fundamental assumption of matter being more basic or consciousness being more
being
basic.
more basic.
right? That is
Yes.
where this goes. If you were to boil down a disagreement, it would come down to that. So
Yes.
this is why I think our consciousness philosophy episode is, because what I am saying is you need to observe matter, you need to calculate matter, and then you
Hmm.
can determine. And where you're saying is no,
Yes.
you intuitively know, which
Yes.
sounds like nuts if you look at it from a
Yes.
Western perspective, right?
Yes.
So
And
I think
especially
it goes back.
today's perspective, when we are all into very, very specific courses, understanding qualifications and capabilities which are stamped by an institution. If you did not get that degree from NTU, you would not be an engineer, Utkarsh, no matter how many
Actually,
engineering books you studied.
I'm barely an engineer right now, but I actually that is not my point of disagreement. On that, I would agree. My point is, I don't think you can design a building without calculating the forces. You can't just look at it
Yes.
and say, I need this long. That is my point of disagreement, not whether you need a degree.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, you're right. That is a point where we disagree. In today's world, this kind of intuitive understanding does not have any value, but it exists. That would be my
Mm-hmm.
contention. And well, we have
Mm-hmm.
many examples of both the
Okay.
sides. I have given one,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe now I'll give you another chance. By the way, with this Shilp or Vastu Kala, you had another hit. Metallurgy is another hit. It should not be in this list. Why should
Okay.
metallurgy and mines be in this list? It should not, because today it's very much a science.
Mm-hmm.
Extraction of ores, metals, making jewelry, mining, enameling, making imitation jewelry is also there in this. An examination of coins and gems, all that is there. And
Mm-hmm.
an expert in making machinery, yantra matrika.
Mm-hmm.
This is also
Mm.
an art, Utkarsh. I'm sure you thoroughly disagree with this.
Oh, it makes sense to me actually.
Glad to hear that. I will make an Indic intellectual of you yet.
Is there something like an intellectual, or are we again using a Western lens?
No, actually, let me tell you this. There is something like an intellectual. I was thinking about it, in
And is
fact.
that part of those arts? No, that's outside.
No, no, I'm looking for something inside the arts. So, this person who is an expert in literary arts, he or she can compose verses, he knows words and their meanings, understands the meters, knows poetics, reads with perfect enunciation, knows all provincial dialects, can memorize everything. This is your intellectual, perhaps. But Utkarsh,
Mm.
the perfect man, the complete man in the Indic sense is one who knows all the 64 arts, not just these. That is the
Oh,
perfect man.
that's a lot. That's a lot of learning to do.
Remember, Krishan ji and Balram ji did it in 64 days.
Okay.
And if you read any of the, suppose you read any shlok for the for praying to any Devi, Lalita Sahasranam, for example, for Lalita Devi, she is
Hmm.
also the mistress of 64 arts. So anyone who is in any way to be revered is the master or mistress of 64 arts. And Utkarsh, just a little bit of a deviation over here. I saw a film last week. I regretted it very much. But
Star
it's called
Wars.
that too. That too. No, this one was a
Depends on
Hindi
which
film.
episode, though.
Yeah, well, that's another discussion. We have to have this thing on Star Wars also, right? On the Indic
Yes.
influences on Star Wars. No, this one
Yes.
was called Bhool Bhulaiya 3. And
I think there are many clues to you on what the movie would be like. The name, the fact that it's three. I think you are well warned, and you are to fully
blame.
responsible for
I
anything
am
that.
responsible for those 2.5 hours of torture. No, the film was as stupid or interesting or whatever for 2.5 hours. It was the end that I really objected to. So this was supposed
Okay.
to be a horror film. So it
Hmm.
turned out that the ghost was a transgender person who had been wronged by his family, and they
Hmm.
had burnt him alive for dressing like a woman and dancing. This was a man,
Okay.
a prince, who had been
Okay.
burnt alive by his father for dressing like a woman and dancing. I emphasize this
Hmm.
because dressing up, dancing is part of the 64 arts, and all
Hmm.
men are supposed to know the art of dressing up and dancing. And this, he dressed up as a woman. So we
Hmm.
have ample examples in our own mythology. Say, for example, Arjun. He became
Hmm.
Brihanalla. That means he dressed up as a woman and he taught dancing. So,
Hmm.
what are these filmmakers today thinking of? I don't know. They are
I
definitely
don't think they
not
know.
thinking of any. They don't know anything. And God knows where they borrow what from. Getting burnt alive for this kind of stuff is straight out of the Christian playbook.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you have here this Indian prince who is burnt alive for this. So I think that it's important that we are talking about the 64 arts. The fact that all these things were done by both men and women is something I should emphasize. You could not be the complete, well learned and respected and knowledgeable man or woman unless and until you knew these 64 arts. Do you want to make another guess? Otherwise, what I want to do is give you a list of those things which maybe many men wouldn't be caught dead doing today.
Yes, that sounds exactly like what we should say because that also a lot of Western, as you said, right, older Western values are then force fitted into older Indian values,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So we can just understand this.
Yeah. So let me, give you a bunch of some arts which are body decoration arts. So the technique of wearing dress, flowers, and ornaments for men too. Decorating ears and forehead with ornaments and floral designs, making garlands. By the way, if you read any of the old Sanskrit plays, making beautiful garlands for their lovers is one of the biggest skills that the Nayak or the hero has. Now, I don't think, I mean, today's men wouldn't be caught dead making a garland, where maybe women also wouldn't be caught dead making a garland, but I don't know.
Hmm.
But in the south of India, Utkarsh, women still make garlands and put them in their hair every day. Then decorating your face with a tilak, with leaves, with gorochan, kasturi, chandan, etc. This was also done by men and women. Then this is an interesting one, perfumery. So the art of perfume making, which today is seen to be the USP of France, India is one of the oldest centers of perfume making in the world. So makeup,
But
painting.
I, there's so much, but I want to just skip back to something you were mentioning, right? Which is an interesting point, and I think would be interesting for me or the audience to know. So, what are particular traits? So, if you look, think of what in the modern world are considered quote unquote feminine traits, not necessarily longer hair, jewelry,
Hmm,
right? For
hmm,
example,
yes.
what are the what are the different ones that were not necessarily feminine? So, you
Long hair,
mentioned
men had long hair.
what is this art of
Jewelry,
balding, which is more like
yes. Well, too bad their long hair would start from here. Too bad. What to do?
yeah,
But
okay.
Utkarsh, long hair, and as you know, I write historical thrillers. So most of my heroes have long hair, and they used to tie their hair with a band here, over here on the forehead. Then jewelry. I mean, look at the jewelry men wear. Just go back and take a look at the Ajanta painting. They are festooned with jewelry. And it is
Hmm.
also knowing how to wear this jewelry is part of the 64 arts. How to make up your face. That's also part of 64 arts. How to paint your teeth. That's a strange one. I don't think anyone wants to, or do they paint their teeth now? I don't know. I don't know anybody who paints their teeth. But
But that's
well,
not a feminine trait today.
yeah, I mean, it just doesn't happen. Then skill with
Hmm.
wearing dresses. How to be a well-dressed man or woman.
Hmm.
Then I'll tell these are don't they seem to be a little feminine. I'll tell you some more feminine things which men had to know. Making designs with rice powder, flowers on floor or on plates for designs with
Hmm.
cooked food. This was also one of the arts. How to make your
Okay.
bed for different seasons. How to decorate your bed with jewels and flowers. Paving the floor with jewels. Water sports. Making flowers, carts, and palanquins. And cooking,
Hmm.
preparing uncooked liquid and semi-liquid food and preparing cooked food also. Now, isn't this
Hmm.
today seen as a very feminine domain? And then there's this fight back by feminists. And okay, so now, well, men who are in touch with their feminine side or who call themselves feminists will say, yes, I also cook. But in ancient India, cooking was not a female skill. Who is the
Hmm.
best cook of them all? I don't know whether I've mentioned it in this podcast. Do you remember that, Utkarsh? From
No,
our
I don't.
past stories and Mahabharat, Ramayana, Puran, who is the best cook of them all?
I can't remember actually. I don't remember talking about it honestly. Did we?
Maybe we did when we spoke about food. We had an episode
Okay.
on food, remember?
Oh yeah, maybe we did, but I can't remember. I was
Oh,
focusing on the vegetarianism in that episode.
okay. So it was one of the five Pandavas. Guess which one?
Bhim? No.
Yes, yes. Well done. Well, obviously he was the tallest and the one who was most fond of food and everything. Yeah,
Yes,
he is
that
supposed
was
to
the
be
connection.
one of the best cooks in our history. And the other is someone who was who his name is Nal. And there's a story of Nal Damayanti. They used to communicate through swans, and then they got married and they had a very
Hmm.
exciting
Hmm.
married life. Anyway, so Nal was again one of the best cooks in our
Okay.
Puranic history. So cooking again was seen as is seen as a feminine domain. It was not thought of as so in
Hmm.
our past. Now I
Okay.
want to give you
Makeup?
a makeup, yes, makeup and toiletry and painting the teeth. It's called
N- No, no. So
Dasan
makeup
Vasan, huh? Makeup.
was makeup for women only or for men also?
Men also, very much so.
Had makeup.
Yes. So,
Okay.
and that makeup would be, see, one thing is grooming. So, something you
Okay.
know very well about removing the beard, removing whatever
Hmm.
extra hair the man doesn't want
Yeah.
on his body. They used
Yeah.
to do it with
Yeah.
tweezers and they used to do it
Okay.
with knives.
Wow. Okay.
But you know something, even in the Ramayana, there is a description somewhere vaguely of
Yeah.
Sri Ram doing his
Yeah.
personal grooming, and this removal of the beard on his face is mentioned.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is
Using a knife.
grooming using a knife and also plucking out. Whereas plucking out the
Wow.
beard seems very tough. I think it would have been a knife. It would
Yeah.
have been a
No Gillettes,
shaving knife.
unfortunately, back then.
Yes. No Gillette. No Gillette in the jungle. So too bad. But it was very much,
Okay.
and for men or women, making designs with on the face,
Hmm.
the colors used would be yellow, red, white. If you've ever been to a Bengali wedding and you see
Yes.
the way the bride and the groom are both decorated, and then you go back to one of Kalidas's plays, which is called Kumar Sambhavam, which has a description of Shivji and Parvati ji getting married. So Parvati ji's toiletry and makeup and everything is described in detail. So is Shivji's.
Okay.
And all this face painting and wearing your clothes and jewelry and all is a very nice description over
Hmm.
there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, now so I want you to guess. We've gone through quite a few of these. Now I want you to guess.
How many arts have you been through? Roughly 20. That's the
Yeah,
guess. No.
roughly 2025, I think.
Yeah.
Think of something you do every day. I'm giving you a
Run,
hint.
walk, run,
Yes,
walk.
yes. So that is what? Physical exercise. And
Yes.
that is number 64 on the list.
So it's an art.
Yes, it's an art. It's called Vyayamiki.
What about the physical exertion that is part of yoga? How do you differentiate the two?
No, you don't differentiate it. It's all part of the
Okay.
same. Yoga is a special case of Vyayam. Vyayam is all exercise. Yoga is a special case where there is also an aspect of spirituality. There's an act, those eight yam niyam that you have to follow. But it's
Okay.
all part of Vyayam. You don't have to differentiate. Utkarsh, there's too much of differentiation in the Western style does not fit very well into this schema. There are differentiations here. Maybe it's strange to our modern ears because we don't think like that. But the modern silos don't always operate. So somebody would today think that if I go for a run and you are somebody who practices yoga, they're two totally different things. But actually, both are not two totally different things. You are doing it for the same, through the same urge, for the same urge. So that was a hit in one. Think of something else. Think of something that you would never do, something which you think is a vice.
No, I do drink.
Oh, by the way,
Drinking.
drinking is of course there. I mean, not drinking is not an art, but preparing drinks is an art.
You have many artists on the street and drinking also.
So, the the art of cooking I told you, and the other one, this is called Panak Ras Rag Savayojan. This is making all kinds of liquids and semi-liquids to drink. Panak is drinking, and cooking is Aswadya Kala. So think of something which is a vice, Utkarsh.
Gambling.
Yes, that's an art. Gambling and dicing.
So it's an
These two
art
are
when you make
arts.
money, and when you don't.
Yes, yes. It's the art of making money. Then, have you ever played Antakshari when you were a kid?
I've seen it. I didn't play it, but yes, I know what
Okay.
it is.
Yes. So Antakshari is one of the oldest 64 arts, as
Hmm,
well as
hmm, hmm.
puzzles, asking each other puzzles,
Hmm,
making
hmm.
obscure words. Then there
Okay.
were reading competitions. Then,
Hmm.
dumb charades. So something like
Yes.
this guesswork through charades, which is called Manasi,
Hmm.
that was also
Hmm.
an art. Children's
Hmm.
games were an art. Then
Okay.
I think that we've got a good idea of the things which were seen as art. An
Yep.
interesting one for me is speaking in spy language. That's
In
also an
spy
art.
language, in code.
Yes, code. Yes,
Okay.
speaking in code. And communicating through your fingers. So, Utkarsh, where is this still used?
Sign language.
Yes, communicating through your fingers is very important for the diamond trade. All their major
Hmm.
trades are still carried out. The two people sit in front of each other, put their hands in front, and a cloth is placed over the hands. And they
Okay.
speak to each other only through their fingers. So I want to pay this, that person will say no, this, and the entire transaction is
What
completed.
is this called?
This one is called Akshar Mushtika Kathan.
Okay.
So if you try to understand the diamond trade in Surat and also in Amsterdam, especially as done by Gujaratis, it's all done through
Yeah.
this language of fingers. So it's
Okay.
interesting to note that some things are just, we don't think of them as art at all. We don't even know that those things exist. Whereas
Hmm.
others are still very much in use, even though not as an art. The art of memorizing, Dharan Matrika, is also there. The only thing
Okay.
we have not spoken of is that set of sewing, making clothes, spinning,
Hmm. Hmm.
weaving, etc. All these
Yeah.
are also arts. Playing with threads. By the way, magic
Hmm.
shows. Magic shows were also an art.
Sleight of hand.
Indrajal.
What
Indrajal.
about what about something like what is today's stand-up comedy?
Hmm. So I think that comes in Natya because there are 10 types of Natya. And
Okay.
one act shows and comedies are part of them. So I think one act play is different from stand-up comedy, but in a way not different also.
Hmm. Stand-up comedy is one of those relatively newer. It's
Yeah.
really because you have the ability of one person with the microphone, you have the ability of one person to communicate to a much larger audience.
But Utkarsh, we've always had one act plays and one person
Hmm.
plays. By one act, no, I mean one person plays.
Okay.
Those have always been a thing, and those are a
Hmm.
thing in the classification done by the Natya Shastra also. So maybe you can connect the
Okay.
two.
Okay.
Sewing, all men were supposed to know how to sew. By the way, one interesting thing which we don't think of as an art today is writing. Writing was an art. Remember, not everyone wrote those days. So learning how
Okay.
to write was an art.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
we've got quite a good example now, this going through 64 of these heads is not a very interesting way of doing it. So I hope that we've presented it to everyone in a more interesting fashion. But Utkarsh,
Hmm.
what impression do you get? I mean, uh, what is your takeaway from this?
Firstly, the silo by which art is defined in Western thought is how it's defined as Indian thought is not that restrictive. A lot of things that get into many other different fields, such as making weapons or whether it be uh, cooking or something that you wouldn't consider as art, that's kind of considered
Writing,
art in the Indian. Writing, I
hmm.
would say could be, but a lot of things that you
Calligraphy.
mentioned, calligraphy,
Calligraphy is,
calligraphy,
of
yes,
course, an art, but
is of course
writing,
an art.
yeah. But here
Yeah,
the point is that everyone did not write.
correct, correct.
So people learned how to write. It was a
Hmm.
skill.
Yeah, so that's one thing. For me, the second one, most interesting one, is the idea of, and this is where for me, the idea or the purpose of art. See, when I think of it in Western thought, I think of it as it's all about self-expression. When you think of it's very, very individual, which I think it still can be, but there is here an inherent idea of uh, helping, again, going back to the inherent idea of consciousness and all, right, which is where it links very closely together to other aspects of Indian thought.
Although here
The
I would just like to put in one little word, there is
Yeah,
this idea of individual expression because see, kala is supposed to be that which gives you happiness. That's what it means. And
okay,
ka is related to creation. So
okay.
it is a creation by the self or by many selves of that which gives you happiness. So there is an element of self-expression in it. It's not
Hmm.
absent, but
Yeah,
perhaps it's
yeah,
not the most important thing.
exactly. Which is a little bit different when you think of it in the modern context. There's a big difference versus the modern context. And
Yes.
the third very interesting takeaway was the lack of differentiation between men and women in terms of what arts, what the
Yes.
expression of the arts are, and certain
Yes.
things that are identifiably today in the modern context supposed to be feminine, but of course people are fighting back against it and all of
Yeah.
that. But there is no artificial differentiation like that in the
Yes.
Indian context. That was the other
Yes.
takeaway that I found very fascinating.
Very true. And I'll connect it up to the fact that the same thing is there in clothes. Indian clothes,
Mm-hmm.
ancient Indian clothes are gender neutral. Everyone wears the
Yep.
uttarye and the antarye, and
Mm.
it's just the different ways of wearing them,
Yeah.
different ways of draping them. So there was at its very essence and its very depth, there was really no gender differentiation. The basics
Mm-hmm.
were not gender differentiated. Of course, in practice, in actual life,
Mm-hmm.
there were
Mm-hmm.
some things ascribed to women and some to men. Those things did operate. But the theory and philosophy of the way life has to be lived, that
Mm-hmm.
there was no gender differentiation
Yep.
in that.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Good.
Utkarsh, we've done this whole thing without showing a single picture. In our last episode, one of our viewers complained that we did not show all the pictures that we had promised to. We apologize. It's our fault, definitely. We have to take out the time to collect all those pictures and make a link, and we haven't done it yet, have we, Utkarsh? So, my
Yeah, I think.
apologies. My apologies to you. So, you will note this time I have not made any promises of showing anything because I don't know when we'll be able to do that. I have some very, very interesting sketches of
Mm-hmm.
different expositions
Yeah.
of the 64 arts, but they were not easily
Yeah.
available. So I don't know. Maybe one day we'll make a link and put it there, Utkarsh, whenever we have time.
Yeah. No, I guess ultimately, I think it's again a good way to circle back into asking folks if you really like what we're doing, and ultimately everything is a function of the demand there is for it, right? So if we had for example, if this podcast was large enough, it would be very simple because we do this for
Yes.
fun, out of passion. But
Yeah.
we have certain limited amount of times each of us, and we have many, many other things that we might be doing. So,
Mm.
but if this is large enough, if enough people like it, if you're on the fence but you like it, but you don't want to put your foot forward, just putting your foot forward. If enough people who like it do it at scale,
Yeah.
suddenly this becomes large enough that potentially we could even maybe hire somebody which the podcast
Yes.
pays for, and then they can do it for us. As an example, this is why
Yes.
when you see content that is created and you like it, your action actually makes a difference, right? It's like everybody's vote matters. It's kind of strange that you are one person voting out a billion, but at scale, everybody's action gets together. So, which is why
Yes.
I would say that we are doing what we can with the size of the podcast and our passion, fueled completely by our passions at the moment. But yes, if you like us, please do support us, and that helps.
So we are putting a lot of ourselves in this, Utkarsh and me and Utkarsh. So that counts to 1 + 1 = 2. So we apologize for whatever we are not able to do. And we wish we could do everything that you asked us to do. We would love it. And, I feel unhappy and kind of on edge when someone writes back like this, where's this picture? Where's this reference? But I have not been able to keep up with all the questions. Again, I will try. I will try my best. And do keep encouraging us. Do keep showing your interest. And we'll see you again very soon. Please don't forget to watch our Hindi episode next week.
Absolutely.
Namaste.
Wonderful. Take care.